Some kinds of poets.
The kind of poet who never reads at the writer's house.
That's correct.
Why? Why don't we like those kind of poets?
Well, it's not that we don't like those kinds of poets. It's a
You're just being
complicated
nice.
issue.
It's a complicated issue.
It's about the
Why do we prefer the poet like Stevens, who points out that it's the pathetic fallacy? It doesn't really. There is no pathos in the wind, really. It's just molecules being blown away by the atmosphere faster than usual. Wow. How boring and scientific, and non-metaphorical.
Because he's thinking with the things.
He's what?
Thinking with the things
you're still
as they
back
exist.
on the thing.
Yeah,
thing. Okay.
the thing.
The
That's
thing.
what I'm on.
So
my dissertation.
you have to be so Fargo cold. I like Fargo as an adjective. It's like an F word. You have to be so Fargo cold. Sorry. That only when you're in this state, this mindless, thoughtless, frozen, solid, stiff state, do you see that you can't think that there's misery in the wind. The wind and the sound of the few leaves, etc., all that stuff, which is the sound of the land full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place. Okay, here we go. For the listener. We're almost done. For the listener. So all this stuff, all this grammatical stuff, comes now to for the listener. All right, Cecilia Corrigan hiding in the other room. Come forward. Jessica will give you a mic. For the listener. Okay, so suddenly the poem, have you been paying attention so far?
Of course.
So suddenly there's a listener. Now we've got Stevens seems to be, the speaker of the poem seems to be the snowman, snow Fargo guy.
It's okay, I'm just kidding.
So now we've got another figure, the listener. Who's that?
The reader?
Could be. How many of you think it's the reader? The listener's the reader. Sister Sarah? Nobody. Sorry, Cecilia. There's nobody who thinks it's Lily Applebaum. Ms. Meta reference. It's not the reader?
I'm just thinking.
All right, Cecilia, back to Cecilia. If it's the reader, then how does that work?
Thanks. This is like X Games poetry, Al. I don't see why it shouldn't be the reader because,
well, let's stay with the mic. We're going to go on. For the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. So the listener seems to be the same figure, and now more closely associated with the reader, listener of the poem. Right now you guys are more listeners than readers. And the Stephen Snowman cold, Fargo cold figure. So in a way, we've merged, and we're all, both of us, the listener, the reader, and the speaker snowman, are all so cold that thought has drained out of us. Metaphor is not, doesn't do anything for us anymore. We've become literal, and we are literally nothing. And now, Cecilia, stay with it. And nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there. Let's start with that. Nothing himself, translate.
Meaning?
What?
The author?
Well, but describe
figure?
it. Nothing himself. What for the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself, he's being modified, consisting of nothingness himself, being a nothing himself, having no thought, Zen-like no thought himself, beholds, back to Max, beholds what, Max?
Nothing that is not there.
Which means what? Use your logic.
It beholds the same way that he hears things in the wind. He hears a nothing that is not necessarily there, but it's projecting.
Okay,
an
translate
absence.
Nothing that is not there. Give us it in other words. If I say to you, I've just come in from Locust Walk, and I say, nothing that is not there. I just saw nothing that is not there. What did I mean?
Well, it can mean a different. There could be a nothing that is actually not there, or
Right.
it could be no thing that isn't there. So it would be like all things there, right?
It could be two negatives becomes a positive.
Yeah.
Nothing that is not there, and he also beholds, being nothing himself, nothing that is. The nothing that is. That's the real Zen thing. Max?
Yes.
Give the mic to Jessica. We're going to go to Julia Block for the final words. Are you crying about this poem already? And nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is.
I think when the listener is fully aware of himself as nothing, he can only then fully regard the nothingness in the landscape.
The nothingness in the landscape, which is the resistance to metaphor, the resistance to liking it to anything, and also the resistance almost, Rebecca, to being. This is like an experiment in draining being out of you and being exactly what nature is. I'm going to read the poem again, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jessica for The Mind of Winter. The Snowman. One must have a mind of winter to regard the frost and the boughs of the pine trees crusted with snow, and have been cold a long time to behold the junipers shagged with ice, the spruce rough in the distant glitter of the January sun, and not to think of any misery in the sound of the wind, in the sound of a few leaves, which is the sound of the land, full of the same wind that is blowing in the same bare place, for the listener who listens in the snow, and nothing himself beholds nothing that is not there, and the nothing that is. So tonight, this is all about nothingness. The poems that you're about to hear are not nothing. They're not the nothing that is not there. They are the nothing that is, which is the best kind of stuff. So glad that you came, and Jessica Lowenthal, our director, is going to take us through the rest of the program. Here's Jessica.